Hey guys, Pete here. Picking up with my Mr. Robot Season 1 rewatch. This will be my recap and review for Episode 5. Episode 5 is called Exploits, and when you think about it, that's what this show is all about. We've talked about daemons running in the background, we've talked about bugs, we've talked about how that all relates to the things that you hide from other people, weaknesses, if you will. So it's all about vulnerabilities, and we can call those exploits, right? We can call that how people use the things that are part of you against you, and we see this play out on a human level in this episode. It's another strong episode, in my opinion. It does contain one part of the first season that I didn't like as much as some of the other parts, and that's the Fernando Vera stuff, but it all makes sense and fits in pretty well in the final product. In this episode, we would learn more about his situation. He basically did the opposite of what Elliot would do, and that's he put everything, all of his business online and social media in a code that wasn't that hard to crack. His little brother gave him the idea, so his little brother is out there trying to right the situation, and we find out that Vera's definitely in trouble. He's going to be doing time. His lawyer's saying there's no deal on the table, so he wants to avoid Supermax. And he basically says, you know what, if they lock me up, it doesn't matter where the bars are. And in this process, he realizes that Elliot is the one who tipped them off. There's a photograph there we see on the table, and that gives things away. We get a little bit of his worldview, I guess you could say. We hear him say this thing of making it right with the universe. He says that's how we get square with the universe. And so we get the idea that Shayla is in trouble because to this point, she's the only one who's actually broken through Elliot's defenses on the human level. And his kind of thinking is going to be to get even with Elliot by getting to her. We learned in the past episode that they're going to try to breach the security at Steel Mountain. We see that plan play out. As they're driving up, Elliot sees that their tagline is impenetrable. He says nothing is actually impenetrable. A place like this says it is, and it's close, but people still built this place. And if you can hack the right person, all of a sudden you have a piece of powerful malware. People always make the best exploits. In the themes of this show, there are things that I think are absolutely profound. And one of those is the way that Elliot tells us he's never had trouble hacking people. He's never had trouble picking up on their weaknesses. And what I think is really interesting about that is that he has no idea. We saw in the last episode that he has no idea what his own monster is, his own weaknesses are. He has clues as to certain things, but it's just one of those life things, you know. You can see what other people are struggling with, what they can't see past, but it's not so easy with yourself. So he runs into Bill Harper, who is a pretty unsuspecting character when we meet him. And he is the guy that Elliot has to get through to get out of level 1 into level 2, or he can put in the Raspberry Pi. And let's face it, Bill never stood a chance against Elliot, and it's a pretty brutal scene whenever this goes down. He tells him, think about it, Bill. If you died, would anyone care? And, you know, we get those shots of the background of his Instagram account that has a few pictures of him and his cat, and it's a pretty good setup, and it just is, you feel terrible for Bill at the end, if you're human, I guess. But he is a perfect weakness for what needs to happen. Things don't go exactly smoothly, but one thing leads to another, and Elliot finds himself on level 2. Of course, where he gets there, things aren't set up the right way, so he ends up going back down, and then he ends up running into Tyrell. Now, this is a little bit too convenient for my taste, but they explain why they're there. The big actual reveal here is that Tyrell tells him he knows that he set up Terry Colby. He doesn't have proof, he can't prove it, but he knows that it's his doing and he's not going to turn him in. I think what kind of makes this work is some of the actual camera work that's involved, and I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to pretend like I can tell you why. I just think that when we're watching the Bill scene and we're watching some of these interactions between Tyrell and Elliot, that there's a mood that's set by the way that things are depicted, and I think it works really well. Like I said, it seems a little too convenient that Tyrell would be there and that Elliot would be able to get access as a result of Tyrell being there, but it goes along with what we're talking about here. Mr. Robot's whispering in his ear that Tyrell's weakness is his strength. It's his hubris, the way that he wants to be recognized for his greatness. And that's how Elliot does what he does. I mean, there's some really funny parts throughout this sequence of events at Steel Mountain. And, where Elliot just doesn't do anything, or he does something that would be otherwise ridiculous, but because the other systems are in place, like his webpage that says that he's a billionaire and whatever, it all seems to work out. It's kind of interesting to look back. When we talked about the last episode, we talked about the different weaknesses that the different people had. So I won't rehash them all here. We see, I think there's a conscious effort to show us some of the differences about Tyrell and Elliot. Tyrell mentions that these two guys that he was talking to are financiers of Hezbollah and ISIS. And he kind of puts down the waiter who has to serve him. That's the most important thing that he has to do is give him a salad. I thought the scene where Elliot's sitting there and the cops or the security guards come up and he looks really afraid there. And then he goes off to the bathroom and throws up. I mentioned it before and I'll mention it again. Rami Malek does a really great job in this series altogether. But anyways, as he is in the bathroom throwing up, he realizes that he is on level 2 now. This whole thing worked out how he had hoped. And he installs the Raspberry Pi before Tyrell comes in to interrupt him. When Tyrell does come in, he drops a bit of a truth bomb. Like I said, he talks about the Colby thing, but he also says that Elliot's bug, or his monster, he mentions his father. He mentions his father dying, and so that is an indication that Tyrell's pretty good at hacking people as well, even though it looks like in this round, Elliot wins because he's able to put the Raspberry Pi into place. Just to finish up the idea about Terry Colby, the reason why he doesn't care to turn him in is because Terry Colby not being at E Corp anymore serves him and his chance to be able to move up the ladder. We later see him go back to New York City and they have dinner with the next CTO, Sharon and Scott Knowles. We see Joanna in her native element working the room, working everybody there. We see a strange interaction with Tyrell when he goes into the bathroom and she kind of yields to him in a way and then he just walks out. And one of the big things that comes out during the dinner was that Tyrell knows that he's going to be the CTO. He knows that Scott Knowles is going to be the CTO. And that information he got from monitoring the phone, and really he shouldn't have it. Scott Knowles knows he shouldn't have it. So even though everything goes right at Steel Mountain and they pull off what they needed to pull off there, there's still another part that goes wrong for Fsociety, and that's the idea that Darlene isn't able to bring the Dark Army on board. We see her get kicked from the RC channel and banned, and then we see her track down Cisco, who tells her that it's over, leave it alone. And we learn that even Cisco doesn't know why they won't help, but he doesn't seem to think they can be brought around. And that ends up at Coney Island with Darlene about to go ahead with the hack anyways, even though everyone in the room knows that it won't do any good because everything they destroy is backed up in China. After Mr. Robot isn't able to do so, Elliot's able to talk her off the ledge, I guess you could say. He says that they'll figure out something. He doesn't know what it is, but for today that everything's over. I think one of my favorite parts of the episode on Rewatch is when he talks to Shayla over the phone. I never noticed how much he was positively affected by her. Of course, when he gets back, we see that she's been kidnapped. Her phone is there and he talks to Vera on the phone. But yeah, it's clear here that he did what he had to do. He talked to her on the phone when she called. He smiles. She makes him happy. She has broken through his defenses, and that makes it a little bit more devastating when she gets sucked up at the end. Angela does actually leave Ollie, and we see her go out to stay with her father. She finds out that he still owes a lot of money to E Corp because of her mother's illnesses for insurance payments. She goes for a run late at night, and we see her kind of soul-searching as to how to move forward after leaving the city and finding out this information. There was a couple funny parts in this that are political, I guess, but Shayla tells a lie about being a pharmaceutical rep rather than being a drug dealer at her new job. And the girl says, oh, that must have been nice. She must have made bank. What happened? And she just says, oh, Obamacare, which is pretty funny when you think about it, because that's the kind of lie you can tell that people will believe just because they don't really know anything about it. But yeah, overall, a pretty good episode. Things are moving, and I can't wait to watch the next one, so I'm going to finish this now. So let me know what you think in the comments of this video. Please like it if you enjoyed it. Please think about visiting my Patreon and getting involved over there. Make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already and turn on notifications so you'll see when new videos are released. Follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We can interact over there. And I'll be finishing this up before season 3 starts, so check back soon. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you again.